Yes, we are live again, and we've got Buttons, Heyns, and Luke Stam. I will not say your last name because it's
Stamatiadis.
exactly,
It's
and
been
I've
abbreviated to STEM.
exactly. But I'm very excited about today because Buttons, I normally talk about team development, and I'm always bringing the business part of it. But today, with Luke around, he really knows about team development because he coaches the Namibian inline hockey team, right? And
Coach, yeah.
yeah, and the whatever team, the Windhoek team, right? And that,
And
guys,
the
it
head
is
coach.
in the yeah,
Yeah,
it is in Namibia, which is in Africa, right, Buttons? So tell us more about you, and then we're going to talk about more about team development and how we're going to put that to a business team development as well. Okay, go for it.
Okay, thank you, Veronica. Thank you very much. I'm Buttons Heyns. I'm from Swakopmund, and we've invited Luke Stamatiadis today. He's the coach for Casadores Inline Hockey Club in Windhoek and also the assistant coach for Namibia. Luke, welcome. Thank you very much for being part of us today. Maybe just give
thank
a
you.
little bit of background and then say where you are, what you do, and then we're going to talk about the team development and the stages that a team goes through developing.
Sure. Thank you very much for having me, guys. Really excited for this. My name is Luke Stamatiadis. It's a mouthful. So it has been abbreviated to Luke Stummy.
Oh, that's good.
Stummy is a name I got given by a football coach when I was 9 years old, and it stuck with me right the way through. So I am initially from Cape Town. I started playing inline hockey in Cape Town. Did that for about 15 years there. And in that time, I did about 5 years of coaching inline hockey in Cape Town. And then I moved to football. I carried on carried on my coaching with football for another 10 years at Old Mutual. And then I made the jump and followed my wife over here to Windhoek. Yeah, we've been here for 2 years, and I have been the head coach of Kamikaze at DTS for the last year and a bit.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah,
Excellent, Luke. Thank you very much. So, yeah, like I said, team development. The team has got a few stages that it goes through developing, and some of these stages can take a few days, and it can also take up to a few months. So normally, when we talk about teams, and especially sport teams, it takes longer for them to go through these development stages um, because of certain aspects. Now, some of these stages can also interact and interplay simultaneously, but obviously one has to look at the signals and the signs of each of these development stages. Now, we call these development stages the forming stage, the storming stage, the norming stage, and obviously eventually we want to get to the performing stage. And that's where the ultimate gets together. So as a team manager or as a team coach, it's obviously your role to guide your team members through all these different stages and also to develop them through these different stages. So Luke, as a new coach, would you say that you are already through the forming stage of your teams?
I would say um, because we've got so many members, there's about 100 odd members here at the club.
Wow.
Yeah, it's quite a few, and a lot of them in fact, most of them are under the age of 18. So, you know, going through these phases, a lot of the forming stage will take a lot longer with certain groups, whereas some of the older, more experienced players will get to that performance level a lot quicker than say the kids.
Yeah. So also, Veronica, what's important to know about the forming stage, like Luke said as well now, is everybody gets together and everybody's quite polite with each other. You can call it like Yeah, like the honeymoon stage of
Yes.
a wedding. So
Yes.
everything
Yes.
is fairly smooth still.
Yes.
Not a lot of hiccups. So you're also explaining to your team members what their specific roles would be and how they would have to interact. Some people will interact easier,
Yes.
more easily, and some will
Absolutely.
be more difficult.
Yeah.
So you spell out your vision of your team, and that's how you continue. So there's a lot of interaction in the sense of giving out information, telling them what your goals are, what your visions are. It's the same with your wife. So you're feeling each other out. And
Well, yeah, right.
there's not a lot of detail involved here.
Well,
Right.
you know, let me tell you something. If it comes to the woman, there is a lot of detail involved. But you know, I always bring this back to business, and I'm just excited about this because everything that you're explaining is exactly the same thing that you have to do in business when you are running a team, because it's all the same thing, right? But I think as a sports coach, you guys know more about bringing that team together and what to do with it and the specific stages, which I've never heard of, but is more detailed than what it is in business, because, you know, as small business owners, we just go in and go for the game, right? So, and everybody we schlep with, so there's no organizing the team and unless you are used to sales, I would say, you know, if you're used to running a sales team. So we're on the honeymoon stage, and what's next?
Yeah. Okay. So for the first stage, for the forming stage, you wouldn't expect your team to perform. It's not the stage that they will perform. It's actually a stage where you want to engage them all.
Yeah.
So Luke can explain to us how he does that, how he controls the forming stage in sport, for instance.
Yes.
So what we did with the club, I was fortunate enough to start just before the AGM. So we had the entire club here gathered, and I presented the club with a 10-year plan, just to get everybody on board and to see what the vision is, what I would like to achieve, and where I would like to take the club over the next 10 years, with some milestones that, you know, we try to achieve along the way, so that it is very goal-directed, and everybody that's involved knows what are we trying to do, where do we want to go, and at any point you can kind of you can take stock and say, well, this is where we wanted to be after 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is. Are we there? Are we falling short? Where are we falling short? So I think having that plan or having that vision laid out, it gives you a very easy option to appraise yourself, and possibly even with players.
Yes.
In the same breath, you have a goal-orientated discussion with an individual player as well as a team. What do you want to achieve over a short term, a medium, a long term?
I like that you guys are using a 10-year plan instead of just the 3-year or 5-year that normally in business you have, because it is a long-term goal that you need to look at instead of just short-term goals. And what is HEM?
Long term.
Yes. What is HEM?
AGM, it was an annual general meeting. AGM.
AGM, okay. I have to find out what this is. Okay.
Okay, yes. So it's also important. I mean, Luke, that's quite true. And if you look at Luke saying that he's working on the 10-year plan or a 5-year and a 10-year plan, normally with us that have to develop teams, it's a situation. It's either circling around the Olympics every 4 years or around the World Champs, and where you want to see yourself develop into a certain period of time. So some people would say the first time we go to a World Championships would only be for the experience and see where you fit in, and you know that you're not actually going to be on the medal podium, but like Namibia now, they've had a situation where one of their teams are actually 6th best in the world. So we have sort of gauged ourselves, and we know where we can work up to. So that's where it's going. So so the next stage, I would say, which one will go to is the storming stage. So you formed your team now, and now it's the storming. This is actually where the work starts. So everybody knows what their roles are, and they have to now to start taking responsibility for their roles and actions. And also, it can happen that there might be some difficulty in this stage because people don't understand exactly what they were supposed to do, or they didn't listen correctly, or they didn't perceive the message or the message correctly. So
I'm thinking about the wife.
yeah,
She didn't get the message
so
correctly.
it can be that some of these storming phases are quite stormy, if you want to say that. Excuse the pun there.
Yeah.
And so there can also be a very competitive stage in the sense, and Luke will tell us a little bit more about that, because the people are competing for leadership roles here, and some would positively come forward, others won't. They might be sitting back a little bit. But it's also the stage where you have to start including everybody in the team, and sort of wipe out the confusion that there might have been because they didn't listen properly or they didn't understand the whole vision and goal. Luke, have you found that in your sports teams as well?
Yes, I think when I started, there were, before we'd done any evaluations with players, there were some players, and I mean these are from 12 up to 16-year-olds, who they want different things out of the reason why they're playing the game. Some of them just want to be there. They just want to have some kind of an outlet, and this is it. Other players are competitive. They want to win. They want to make sure that they get onto those national teams, and you've got to make sure that when you put that team together, you've got the right goals in mind for the players that are going to go and form together. Because if you've got somebody that's just there for the social aspect, playing with somebody that wants to win, you're going to have a clash. You're going to have a big clash when that really driven player turns around and thinks, well, this guy's not pulling his weight, or she's not doing what she's supposed to be doing, and it'll disrupt the harmony of the whole team. And I think that comes back to this forming stage where you need to identify these players, identify the goals of what these players need to do, and what they want to achieve before putting them into a team.
Yeah. So what do you do if somebody is just there for the social aspect? I mean, everything you're saying echoes exactly what happens in business. But so what do you do? And obviously with kids, you're also dealing with parents. But what do you do if you have that person that's not pulling in the team, and you have this rest of the team that are raring to go and build it and be competitive? What do you do?
Again, then that's where you've got to have that conversation with the player.
Yeah.
What do you want out of this? What is your goal? No, I just want to be a social player. I just want to have fun. Mm-hmm. Then you've got to find enough of those players to put on a team.
A different team, yeah.
Yes, I don't want to call it a B team, but on a social team. Yes. Because they are there for the social aspect, and they don't mind if they win or if they lose. They are there to enjoy the sport.
Yes, and you need that as well. Yes.
Having that separation. Some people, this is the second or third sport that they do.
Yes.
So for them, it's not the number one goal. It's not the number one priority. They will come to training twice a month. A lot of the older guys have families, have children. So you've got to then prioritize. Where does this team want to go?
Yes.
Do the goals of this team line up with the players?
Yes, exactly. I find that's hugely important, because life right now. So I have another question for you. So what's happening right now where you can't mix the whole team? I mean, the whole thing of coaching has changed for you, and even in business, because you can't have everybody in the same office. So how do you handle that?
That was quite difficult. I mean, during this COVID crisis that we've been in, we were in the situation where we continued to train, but we weren't allowed to play competitively, and we weren't allowed to have more than 10 people on the rink at any one time.
10? That's quite a lot. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, 10, I suppose. Yeah, it's quite a bit. We're now at 50. So
Wow.
we're at that now. So we had to juggle between, do we keep families together because that's what's safe, or do we keep the players that need to perform at a certain level together? So we try to find a balance between that. We went, the majority of the time we went with trying to keep parents that are training with their kids in spots, and we would have there were about 12 groups that we managed to see twice a week during that 2 months that we were in that phase.
Yeah, interesting, because here, what they've done, I've got a client who has I'm bringing back to e-commerce. She has a retail store and an e-commerce store. That's why I'm involved. But they do school sports. It's hockey, field hockey, and lacrosse and volleyball. But so what they've done is they've actually had, because they had to train, for the new season, is bringing them together at 6 at a time, and the only person that stays is the goalie, stays the whole day. So they would have sessions of 6 people. It's crazy, right? It's absolutely crazy. But they've managed, and these girls are so enthusiastic that they will actually do whatever needs to be done.
And I found that the younger kids were a lot more enthusiastic. They were excited to get back on their skates. They were excited to be out of the house, not looking at a screen.
Yes.
Whereas the people that are the parents or the adults that are running businesses and things, they just focused on business, make sure the income is still there. And there were a handful of them that came.
Yes.
So it made the decision on where to prioritize your training and who gets to train, it made it quite easy.
Yeah. It's very hard. It's very hard with the children at home and running a business or running a home, right? And everybody in one confined space. So yes, I expect the kids were very, very happy to get out of the house.
And I think the parents were
I think it's also important. Luke talked about splitting up the social groups with your more serious group. Mm-hmm. But the social group also brings an important part to your club, because they are the sort of the culture for your club. They keep your club going, and they also are your supporting group. So although they're not competing on a higher level or not achieving to compete on a higher level, they're still very important. But that's just a sort of a side remark. So I also think for teams now, this specific year is going to be very difficult for a group and a team to go through all these different stages, and you'll probably be falling to and fro from one stage to another stage, because Luke and them didn't have enough time with the specific teams to train them properly. So the performance or the norming and performing stages would be a little bit more difficult this year, and the performance also wouldn't be as what you would have wanted them on a year where you were supposed to go chapter postponed. So that breaks up your development a little bit. But so after your storming stage or phase, you get to your norming phase where the roles are now quite clear of each of these players, where they're going to play, what their specific roles are. They know what has to be done. They understand their roles. Obviously, all the objectives of the team has been made clear, and there's a better team collaboration and a team focus than what you would find in the 2 previous stages. Would you say that as well, Dave? Look on your situation now.
I think based on the situation that we've been in now, I don't think we've had the opportunity to really get that norming stage, or at least get through it, because everything's been changing so rapidly and so quickly. There's been very little constant. We went from being allowed to play to
Yes.
not being allowed to use sticks. So only being allowed to skate. Then we went from having full groups to now there's only 10. Then we weren't allowed to use our skates again. Then we were allowed to use our skates again.
What's that got to do with COVID?
It's a contact sport.
Oh.
Contact
Yes.
sport, and
Yes.
That's part of why we weren't allowed to use sticks and pucks for a time. And then then we managed to get through that phase. We engaged with the Sports Commission, and we managed to then start doing conditioning with pucks and sticks again. But in terms of consistency, because so many people were available or not available, and then the schools were closed and then they were open again, and everybody's schedule was just constantly up in the air. We haven't had that chance to go through that norming phase. It's been a big knock in terms of the groups forming that bond. Whereas we've been able to work on individual skill a lot more in this time, in short little bursts and short little 45-minute segments. So you'll find that the players would have developed on an individual level, but that team chemistry hasn't had a chance to form yet.
No. Yeah, and that's hugely important that they get to know each other.
Yes, and get familiar with each other, and get that hockey IQ, that chemistry that they require to be able to perform at that high level.
Yeah.
They've got to build that up. They've got to be able to trust each other and learn each other and know how they're going to interact with each other when they're under pressure.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
So again, Luke, you've also important. We're going to get basically problems to get through the norming stage. So important also in the storming phase is also maybe this year you need to sort of work on the culture of the team again, work on the culture of the club again, also socialize a little bit more, get that chemistry going till such stage as one can get all these teams together and they can play in a proper competition. I know that you've done your trials now last weekend, and there's going to be a competition, I think, end of the year, November only.
They've moved it to December, yeah.
Wow. So so are you playing? You're not playing actual competitions right now, right?
At the moment, no, because we're not allowed more than 50 people at one facility at any time.
Yes.
So there was correspondence that came out today, and Buttons and Dave and myself have been discussing it and trying to interpret it.
Yes.
So we'll see what that interpretation is. Hopefully that'll allow us to get back to some form of competitive hockey. What we have managed to do last week, as Buttons mentioned, is we had a national training camp, a national development camp in Scotland, which was great. The community needed it, the national teams needed it, the kids hadn't seen each other for 6 months.
Yeah.
And just to see everybody's face again and start getting back into some kind of a routine.
Yeah.
So that was a big positive. And there's something happening again next weekend in Otjiwarongo. We've got a development camp happening there again. So the wheel is turning slowly, and we're getting back to some kind of normal. And I'm glad, Buttons, you mentioned the social aspect. We've actually got all the senior players, so all the parents, all the adults, if you call them that. We've got all of them meeting at the rink on Saturday at 1 o'clock. And we're just going to play for 6 hours.
That's so fun.
We're going to have a braai, or barbecue.
Barbecue. Yep.
They call it over there. We'll have a braai on the go, and everyone will just have a chance to catch up, sit down, get on the rink, play hockey, come back and sit, and get back to that social aspect. And start rebuilding it.
That's brilliant. Okay. And we've got about 6 minutes. We want to keep this to about 30 minutes. So we've got 6 minutes. So any last advice to give?
Yeah, I would say that because of the year and it's taking a little bit more time, like I said in the beginning, these stages can take quickly or they can take a long time. Now this year there's been interruptions. It's called obstacles in the way. So this is why it's going to be more difficult to go from one stage and and smoothly go over to the next stage.
Yeah.
And you have to take those obstacles and then reassess as a team leader or as a coach to go back to maybe the previous stage, reconnect yourself, get all the actions clear again, all the responsibilities clear again, and then move forward again. So this year is going to be very difficult to get to a performing or norming and performing stage because of all the interruptions. But one has to work with that, and that's the reality that we're facing.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely. I think that has to do. I mean, just life in general. I think everybody's getting, and the only word I have is hurtful for the situation right now. And I don't think there's there's an expression in American or English, but it's like we're just tired of it, right? This is it. We need to get back to normal business and normal life. But I think that's going to be a huge transition as well for people to actually move from isolation and doing stuff at home, moving out and socializing and learning how to socialize and not be worried about the interaction. Right?
Hopefully it comes back quicker than than not.
Yeah, I know, right? I know. So, Buttons, any last words? We're going to finish.
No, I would say one must just get stuck there, and obviously if you have your visions and your goals and your objectives laid out,
Yes.
and you know what steps you're going to follow, that should make it easier, and take the obstacles as they come and work them away. And, but obviously constantly working on your team to motivate them, and to also tell them that we're moving towards a common goal, and what their responsibilities are in achieving that common goal. I think that's basically how it is. Next time we can talk a little bit more about the other two stages, the norming and performing stage, and what the principles
I love this.
Are for those specific stages. Thank you, Luke, for being with us, and I hope that all these rules and regulations can relax a little bit tomorrow, maybe, so that we can go out and compete.
Yes, I know, right? So I love this whole session because we were talking about the goals and the 10-year plan and sticking to it, and literally just having a plan. I mean, this is it, right? You have to have a plan. Otherwise, you don't know where you're going, even with all the obstacles that we have right now. So this has been brilliant. Thanks, guys. We will see you next Thursday again, right?
Thank you very much, Veronica.
Yes. Brilliant. Bye.
Bye-bye.